The lava plain exploded. The ground beneath the stormtroopers buckled without warning, splitting open like a wound torn through the skin of Mustafar. Trooper TK-77 vanished instantly, his scream cut short as the fissure swallowed him whole, his white armor disappearing into darkness thick with sulfur and ash. Another stumbled backward, his rifle tracking frantically as black shapes burst from the smoke, moving faster than targeting sensors could track, faster than training could prepare for. Blaster bolts lit the air in frantic red streaks. They hit nothing, or worse, they hit something that did not stop. Sergeant Krell saw it first, the dome of the head, elongated and impossibly smooth, catching the glow of distant lava flows. Then the teeth. Then the impossibility of what came next. A Xenomorph dropped from above, landing squarely on Trooper DV-4429's chest. The man didn't even have time to raise his hands. Its inner jaws punched through plastoid armor with a wet, efficient crack that echoed across the volcanic plain. Acid blood sprayed outward in a corrosive mist, hissing as it ate through rifles, helmets, the flesh beneath. A trooper fell screaming, clawing at his own dissolving chest plate as the white plastoid turned black, then red, then nothing. Fall back to the... Krell's order died in his throat as he saw them emerge. Not one, not three, dozens. They poured from fissures that hadn't existed moments before, moving with a fluid coordination that violated every assumption about mindless predators. They flanked, they divided, they cut off retreat routes with tactical precision that would have impressed a Republic general. Above them, two Imperial gunships banked hard through the sulfur-choked sky, repulsors straining as their pilots shouted into open comms, voices crackling with static and barely controlled panic. Ground team is compromised. We're losing them. They're not retreating. By the Force, they're coordinating. The creatures moved with purpose now, not scattered, not reacting to stimuli, hunting. From the shadow of a volcanic ridge, something vast shifted. A massive silhouette rose briefly against the glow of molten rock, too large to be a drone, too deliberate to be the Queen, then sank back into the smoke like a nightmare, retreating at dawn. Sergeant Krell fired his last magazine into the darkness. The bolts vanished without impact, without screams. His final thought, as clawed hands closed around his helmet, was simple. This was never a containment mission. This was a harvest. The Hive was no longer defending itself. It was advancing. 2 standard weeks earlier, the smuggler freighter Minox Ghost tore itself out of hyperspace far too close to Mustafar's gravity whirl. Alarms screamed across the bridge as Captain Rail Tross fought the controls, his hands slick with sweat, his co-pilot cursing in 3 different languages. "We're too heavy," Tross shouted over the shrieking proximity alerts. "Dump the cargo." His first mate, a Twi'lek named Vec, stared at the rear scanner in silence. His Leku had gone pale, the kind of pale that meant something had gone very, very wrong. "Vec, I said dump the cargo," Vec said slowly, his voice hollow. "It's moving." Tross turned. The cargo bay cameras showed nothing but darkness. Then something shifted in that darkness, something with too many limbs. Something that shouldn't exist in a sealed container rated for toxic materials. They never had time to argue. The ship broke apart in atmosphere, trailing fire as it plunged toward the volcanic hellscape below. Hull plates screamed away. The hyperdrive exploded in a flash of blue-white light. But unlike most wrecks that vanished into Mustafar's seas of lava, this one transmitted something first, a compressed burst of data, automatically triggered by the Navicomputer as it registered catastrophic failure. Coordinates, biological asset markers, Hive viability projections, containment breach protocols, corporate ownership tags. The signal punched through subspace, bounced off a deep space relay, and vanished into the void. It did not go unnoticed. Within days, Imperial intelligence flagged the transmission as anomalous. The encryption was elegant, ruthless, and entirely unfamiliar. Not Republic, not Separatist, not corporate in any Imperial registry. Commander Vera Sulak reviewed the decoded fragments in her office aboard the interrogator, her brow furrowed. 20 years of signals analysis had taught her to recognize patterns. This had none. It was too clean, too purposeful. The name embedded in the data was repeated only once, like a signature on a death warrant. Sulak cross-referenced the name against every database the Empire had seized from Republic archives, separatist strongholds, and corporate espionage networks spanning decades. Nothing. No trade registrations. No planetary charters. No tax records. A corporation that did not exist, claiming ownership of a biological asset worth enough to justify military-grade encryption. The report was escalated immediately. Past morphs, past admirals, past entire branches of command that normally intercepted anything this sensitive. It was delivered directly to the Emperor. Palpatine reviewed the data alone in his private sanctum aboard the Executor class Star Dreadnought Eclipse, the hollow projector bathing the chamber in ghostly blue light. Thermal scans of Hive structures rotated slowly before him, pulsing with organic heat. Life cycle charts unfolded like grotesque flowers. Adaptation curves spiked sharply upward in ways that defied biological convention. A species that could not be sensed through the Force. A life form that adapted faster than clone armies could be grown. A Hive intelligence that obeyed no fear, no loyalty, no ideology. To most beings, the data would have been horrifying. A nightmare scenario, an extinction threat wrapped in chitin and acid. To Palpatine, it was elegant. He watched footage recovered from the Minox Ghost's black box. Grainy, corrupted, but unmistakable. A creature moving through corridors with inhuman speed. A crew member pulled into darkness, the wet sound of something that might have been feeding. A predator without conscience, he murmured softly, his yellow eyes reflecting the hologram's cold light. Without ambition. His lips curled into a thin smile. Perfect. The Force had always been his greatest weapon, but the Force could be resisted. Jedi could hide. Rebels could evade. Even Vader, for all his power, could be questioned. But this was obedience written in genetic code. This was terror made manifest. This was a weapon that required no loyalty because it had no concept of betrayal. Palpatine pressed a control on his throne's armrest. Commander Sulak. Initiate containment protocols on Mustafar. No orbital bombardment. I want live specimens. A pause. My lord, the standard doctrine for xenobiological threats is irrelevant. His voice was silk over iron. You have your orders. The first order was restraint. Where Vader expected orbital bombardment, the cleansing fire that had burned rebellious worlds to ash, Palpatine instead issued containment protocols. Where extermination was standard Imperial doctrine, written in the ashes of the Jedi Temple and the rubble of Alderaan, the Emperor demanded preservation. Vader objected immediately. He stood rigid before the Emperor's throne, his breathing apparatus the only sound in the vast chamber, his mechanical fists clenched at his sides. These creatures cannot be bent, Vader said, each word measured and hard. I have reviewed the data. They do not submit. They do not negotiate. They consume. Palpatine's yellow eyes flicked toward him with the lazy attention of a predator assessing whether prey was worth the effort. All life bends eventually, my old friend, the Emperor replied calmly. Some merely require the correct incentive. And if incentive fails, then we discover how the galaxy's most efficient predator responds to the dark side of the Force. Palpatine's smile widened. Either way, we learn something valuable. Vader said nothing. But through the Force, Palpatine felt his apprentice's doubt like a cold current in dark water. Good, Palpatine thought. Let him doubt. Let him fear that I have moved beyond needing him. Project Black Egg was authorized within the hour. Imperial Science Division descended on Mustafar with sealed orders and unlimited resources. The surviving Hive, nestled in a collapsed mining complex from the old separatist occupation, was not destroyed. It was studied, isolated, fed. Director Silo IV oversaw the operation personally, his cybernetic enhancements gleaming in the volcanic heat. He had built monsters for the Emperor before. The Inquisitorius, the Shadow Troopers, experimental Sith abominations that had mercifully failed. This was different. This was not corruption of the Force. This was evolution accelerated to weaponized perfection. Stormtroopers were no longer sent to kill the Xenomorphs. They were sent to deliver. Prisoners from labor camps. Political dissidents whose families had already been informed of their deaths. Captured rebels whose executions would never be recorded. The Emperor intended to starve the galaxy of resistance by turning its enemies into raw material. Every dissenting voice, every insurgent cell, every pocket of rebellion would be silenced not through public execution, which created martyrs, but through disappearance, through fear of the unknown. For a brief, horrifying window. It worked. The Imperial biologists engineered pheromonal control markers, crude but effective. The Hive responded to chemical signals pumped into the caverns through repurposed atmospheric processors. Patrol routes became predictable. Expansion slowed, then stabilized. The Queen's egg production could be manipulated by adjusting nutrient delivery schedules. Director Silo reported success after success. The Xenomorphs could be guided, directed, aimed. Entire rebel cells on the outer rim vanished without distress calls. No wreckage, no survivors, no witnesses, just silence. The kind of silence that spreads like infection through underground networks, whispers in cantinas, fears spoken in hushed voices aboard smuggler ships. Something is hunting us. Palpatine watched the reports pile up in his sanctum, satisfaction growing with each one. Mon Mothma's fledgling alliance was fracturing. Recruitment had dropped by 40%. Supply lines were collapsing as couriers refused to travel certain hyperspace routes. The galaxy was learning fear again, not fear of star destroyers or stormtroopers. Those could be fought, evaded, survived. Fear of something worse. Then the message arrived. The transmission did not use Imperial channels. It cut directly into the Emperor's sanctum, bypassing encryption layers that had never been breached before, sliding through firewalls that protected secrets worth more than entire star systems. Every security protocol tripped simultaneously. Every alarm should have screamed. None did. The voice that followed was cold, corporate, precise. It carried the weight of entities that measured profit in planetary extinction coefficients. Emperor Palpatine, you have acquired our asset without authorization. Palpatine smiled, unperturbed. He had been wondering when they would make contact. Authorization was irrelevant to him. He had claimed the galaxy through manipulation and murder. He would not be lectured about property rights by a corporation that apparently trafficked in apocalypses. But the message continued, and something in its tone made even Palpatine pause. The Xenomorph is not the apex. It is the ecosystem. Data streams unfurled across his hollow projector without his permission, seizing control of Imperial systems with contemptuous ease. Worlds stripped bare, biospheres collapsed, civilizations reduced to bone and vacuum. Colony after colony, each progression identical. Contact, infestation, silence. Hundreds of worlds, perhaps thousands. All erased. You believe you control them, the voice continued. All species believe that, until the harvest. "And something is coming," the voice said, each word falling like a judge's gavel, "that hunts ecosystems." The final data packet opened. A hologram formed in the center of the chamber, larger than life, rendered in perfect detail. And a massive figure stood calmly amid ruins that might once have been a civilization, purple-skinned, armored in gold and blue. His expression was not rage or hunger or even satisfaction. It was certainty, the kind of certainty that comes from having ended worlds and found the mathematics beautiful. For the first time in years, Palpatine's smile faded. The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. The hollow projector returned to Imperial control. Every trace of the intrusion vanished as though it had never occurred, except for the image of Thanos, which lingered in Palpatine's mind like a curse. The Emperor sat in darkness for a long time, feeling something he had not felt since his master Darth Plagueis had threatened to unmake him. Not fear. Recognition of another apex predator entering his territory. Palpatine did what he always did when faced with overwhelming force. He adapted, he maneuvered, he offered alliance. He reached out, not through the Force, which would be useless against a being from outside this reality's boundaries, but through promise, through ambition, through the universal language of power. An alliance, shared biological weapons, a galaxy already primed for extinction, ripe for whatever grand vision this Thanos pursued. The response came within hours. Thanos agreed to meet. The location he specified made Palpatine's military advisors blanch. The dead world of Moraband, ancient cradle of the Sith, where the dark side ran so deep that even Vader walked carefully. Palpatine went alone. He stood in the Valley of the Dark Lords as Thanos' ship descended, a vessel that made Imperial star destroyers look like children's toys, all brutal angles and purpose without ornamentation. Thanos emerged flanked by figures that radiated menace. The Black Order, each one a weapon honed to perfection. "Emperor," Thanos said, his voice like grinding stone, "you wish to speak of partnership?" "I wish to speak of inevitability," Palpatine replied smoothly. "You seek balance, I seek order. These are not incompatible goals." Thanos studied him with eyes that had watched galaxies burn. "Show me these weapons you have claimed." "On Mustafar?" Thanos observed. Director Silo eagerly displayed his achievements. Xenomorphs responding to pheromonal commands. Drones attacking designated targets. The Queen producing eggs on schedule. Thanos watched Hive footage with detached interest, studied Xenomorphs tearing through Imperial combat formations during controlled tests, analyzed their efficiency, their savagery, their beautiful economy of violence. Then he spoke, and his words fell like an executioner's blade. "These creatures," Thanos said evenly, "are inefficient." Director Silo's cybernetic face twitched. "My lord, I assure you, they multiply chaos." Thanos turned to face Palpatine directly. "I do not require chaos. I require balance." "Half of all life," Palpatine said, understanding blooming cold and certain. "You intend to correct an imbalance that has plagued existence itself." Thanos' expression never changed. "Your empire fights insurgency. Mine fights entropy. These creatures serve neither purpose. They are a cancer, not a cure." The channel closed. Palpatine felt it through the Force before the reports arrived. A disturbance, vast and methodical, sweeping across the outer rim like a scythe through wheat. Moments later, Imperial outposts across the outer rim went dark. Not destroyed. That would have left wreckage, distress signals, debris fields. Harvested. Commander Sulak coordinated the investigation personally, her shuttle touching down on Ord Mantell, where an entire Xenomorph research facility had gone silent. The garrison, 200 stormtroopers, was intact. The Xenomorph specimens, 47 drones, 3 warriors, 1 queen, were gone. The facility was pristine. No blast marks, no acid burns, no signs of struggle, just footprints. Massive, deliberate, too large to belong to anything in Imperial records. And everywhere, a faint shimmer in the air. Like reality had been folded and unfolded, leaving creases. Recon teams found the same pattern on 19 worlds. Xenomorph hives empty. No bodies, no resin, no heat signatures, only footprints and the lingering sense that something vast and patient had passed through, collecting specimens like a scientist gathering samples. The Emperor felt it then, sitting alone in his sanctum as reports flooded in. Not fear, competition. Someone was playing the same game he was, weaponizing life itself, but with resources and scope that dwarfed even the Empire's vast machinery. For the first time since proclaiming himself Emperor, Palpatine wondered if he had miscalculated. On Mustafar, the Queen sensed it first. In the depths of the Hive, surrounded by her children, she felt something that should have been impossible for a creature of pure instinct. Fear, not of fire. Fire was familiar. Fire was part of this world's nature, not of force. The Force wielder in black had come and gone many times. He could be avoided, predicted. This was different. This was the fear a predator feels when it realizes something higher on the food chain has taken interest. The fear written into genetic memory, into survival instinct older than language. The fear of being prey. She sent her drones deeper, ordered warriors to seal tunnels, began preparing for evacuation, though evacuation was a concept foreign to hive mind species. The Queen, through millions of years of evolutionary programming, understood one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever was coming did not fight. It collected. Vader stood at the edge of the Hive's primary cavern as the sky above Mustafar fractured with unfamiliar energy signatures. Starships unlike any in Imperial design slipped silently into orbit, their hulls absorbing sensor sweeps like stones swallowing light. Through the Force, he felt nothing from them. No life, no anger, no fear, just purpose. Mathematics made manifest. He could have fought. His lightsaber hung at his belt. The dark side surged through this place like a living thing. He could collapse the cavern, bury himself and the Hive together, die as he had been reborn, in fire and fury. But Vader had learned one lesson in his decades of service to Palpatine. Sometimes survival meant sacrifice. He did not ignite his lightsaber. He did not attack the descending ships. Instead, he sealed the tunnels. His mechanical hands moved with brutal efficiency, activating the mining charges Director Silo had installed as failsafes, collapsed chambers, buried the Hive beneath kilometers of molten rock and durasteel, not as a weapon against the invaders, as a contingency, because if something could harvest xenomorphs, creatures that required no food but victims, no rest but murder, then that something would need to be denied any potential weapon, even if it meant destroying the Emperor's prize. The charges detonated in sequence. The Hive collapsed. The Queen's final scream echoed through the Force as a sensation of betrayal and extinction. Vader stood in the ash and watched Thanos' ships depart, unsatisfied, moving on to the next coordinate in whatever vast catalogue they maintained. He had saved nothing, but perhaps he had delayed something. Mustafar burned. The Hive was ash, buried under volcanic fury that would take centuries to cool. Imperial scientists declared victory. Director Silo, promoted for his sacrifice of the primary specimens to prevent enemy acquisition, began planning Black Egg Phase 2. Vader reported success. Palpatine did not. In the Emperor's private observatory, aboard his flagship, surrounded by the cold light of distant stars, A final report arrived from Commander Sulak. Her face was pale, professional, terrified. My lord, during early containment operations 3 weeks ago, a lone Xenomorph egg, removed from the initial crash site for study, was transferred to Research Station Obsidian in the deep core. Palpatine felt ice in his veins. The station reported a containment breach 6 days ago. Standard protocol was followed. The station was jettisoned into an unstable wormhole anomaly before complete infestation could occur. And Sulak's voice dropped to barely a whisper. Last known trajectory, unknown, outside this galaxy. The hologram showed telemetry data. The wormhole had been ancient, unstable, possibly connected to hyperspace routes dating back to the Celestials. The station had vanished into quantum uncertainty. It could have been destroyed, atomized across dimensional barriers, or it could have emerged somewhere else entirely. Palpatine gazed out at the stars, feeling something he had not felt in decades. Not regret, not fear, uncertainty. The Empire wanted a weapon. Wayland Yutani wanted profit. Thanos wanted balance. And somewhere in the dark between galaxies, in realities yet unnamed, in timelines branching like cracks in glass, something was still hatching. This is Research Station Obsidian. If anyone receives this, don't follow our trajectory. Don't search for survivors. The egg, it wasn't empty when we thought it was. It was waiting, learning. The host was already infected before the breach, before we knew. It's in the walls now. It's in the... Please. If you find this station, if you find what's left, burn it, burn everything. Because whatever comes out of this place, it won't be from our galaxy anymore. Subscribe to Infinite Galaxy Multiverse, because the next war won't be fought for power. It will be fought for existence itself.